Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and
I'm Bill Carroll of King's Draft Radio. We'll be also doing some things centered around, obviously, the draft, East Coast, and East-West Shrine Game. We'll talk a little bit about the Senior Bowl as well.
Right. Just to inform you guys, this video, of course, is going to be about the Shrine Game practices, but this man right here, Bill Carroll, has been the love of my life when it comes to football. We're practically football man and wife.
Practically?
Realistically. Practically. Or man and man.
Yes.
If you will.
Yes.
And known him for a very long time. And how long have you been... I mean, in terms of, like, what year did the draft become part of your life?
It's interesting you ask that.
Right.
So I talked to my mom, and she found a notebook I have from my first scouting report I ever wrote in 1979 was on, of all things, Bobby Humphrey. Running back from Alabama, of course, has a son, Marlon, in the NFL now. And I'm now at the point in my life where I'm seeing sons, and probably just a few years away from seeing grandsons, maybe some guys that I've graded. The 83 draft is the first one I fully did, where I actually did a mock draft and tried to look at as many players as I could. Obviously, it was a very different world in those days.
Yeah, exactly.
I had, as I told you once before, I started a UPS account with my money I made from Shores so that I could send tape to friends of mine, because I lived in a Navy town in other parts of the country, but shipped other places. And so they'd say, oh yeah, this Washington State kid's good. And they'd send me some tape they had. It was tape in those days. It was like VHS cassette tapes. And I'd send them, hey, this Lawrence Taylor guy's pretty good or whatever. And I'd send that to them. And we, that's before the internet, before this other stuff. That's how we had our very primitive stone knives and bearskins draft Twitter. But I've been really serious about this for a while, and I started doing it, I guess, professionally, as in someone paid me at least a little something, first beginning in about 2002.
Right. And that's him. I mean, this is, a lot of you guys go, analytics, this, analytics, talk about football. Just watch the tape, man. Just watch the tape. This guy is the definition of just watch the tape. This guy has been doing draft stuff longer than pretty much all the dudes, out there in terms of like draft guys. Now, of course, he's not as famous, of course, but this is a guy that's been watching the draft for decades, been studying the draft for decades, knows more about football. He knows about football before he was even born. He knows, like, he could tell you the actual score of a game before he was even born in some cases. So this is a guy that definitely has a ton of knowledge, a ton of information to give. And today, again, we're going to be talking about the Shrine Game. Now, of course, I was here for the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday practice. You were here for Wednesday.
I got here Wednesday, caught the very tail end of Wednesday.
Right.
And then caught the last full days of practice they've just had.
Right. What were your impressions? I mean, just initial impressions about the Shrine Game for you.
My initial impressions, and it matches with some of the impressions I've had of the draft as a whole. Mm-hmm. The offensive line groups for both teams were rather underwhelming for the most part. The defensive line were a little ahead of the offensive line.
Right.
Though there was no, especially for those who were into the quote-unquote edge players, there was no one guy that would like look and go ooh and ah. There were some guys who were trying to make the always challenging transition from being handing their defensive ends to linebackers, and I think some of them might be relatively successful, but there's no star types for, once again, and not too surprising because the class isn't set up for that in some ways. I liked some of the wide receivers, some quite a bit. The defensive back group is very good across the board in my mind here at the Shrine Game. There's one big back, and he stands out. Like when you see Jordan Chun standing with all the other running backs, he looks like an offensive guard compared to all the other running backs. Yeah. The other running backs are 5'10" on down, and 202 on down,
They got pocket running backs, little running backs you put in your pocket,
because Jordan Chun could put Philip Lindsay in his pocket.
Yes, he
probably.
Could. Yes, he could.
So that's that one sort of standout, and people are probably going to try to move him to fullback because it's what we do now with 235 backs, unless they can fly, unless they're just crazy fast. So I hope he tests well. Maybe he'll get to stay running back. But the running back group caught the ball well. As a whole, there's not a single running back here who cannot catch the ball. And Justin Jackson has really good hands.
Yeah.
I think he helped himself a lot. If we're talking, I don't know if we're going to do the whole helped up themselves the most or whatever, made money.
Right.
To me, Justin Jackson's on the made money list if you're looking about the made money list.
Right.
Doris Fountain maybe made the most money.
Yes, definitely.
of everybody here.
Out of everybody here.
Everybody
yes,
here.
Yes.
I think he made the most money. I think that looking on the defensive side, there are some defensive backs who solidified. I don't know if they made money, but he solidified in people's minds that these are guys who are going to play and contribute as maybe nickel guys as opposed to outside guys, but they're going to play. They're going to be. Dietrich Nichols is going to play in the league for years.
Yep.
No doubt in my mind. And I think that sort of amongst some of the other guys that are going to hang around the league for a while, whether they're starters or backups or third safeties or third corners, whatever you want to call them, because nowadays you're going to have 5 or sometimes even 6 defensive backs on the field more often than you're going to have 3 linebackers on the field.
Oh, yeah.
Or 4 if you're a 3-4 team.
Yeah.
So you're going to need good defensive backs. Here's some other guys that if we're sort of talking about made money. I think P.J. Hall made money amongst the defensive line group.
Right.
And people love Poona Ford, and he's lovable. He's good. Right. But to me, P.J. Hall is just as good. I don't really understand other than...
Well, one played at Texas, the other one played at another Texas.
Still Texas, but not the same.
Exactly.
Name brand. Yeah. I guess the difference is name brand school.
Yeah, name brand school.
But if you like Poona Ford, you're going to really like P.J. Hall, in my mind. So I think P.J. Hall helped himself. I think Javon Roland Jones looked probably the least stiff of the guys who have to make the transition from being a hand in the ground defensive end to linebacker. He didn't look amazing. He just looked fluid enough.
Very fluid.
Yeah, he looked fluid.
I mean, when he was going through pass rush drills,
he's the most fluid of all the guys that they're going to ask to. Ostman's the most polished, though, of all the guys that they're going to ask to play 3-4 linebacker or whatever. Right. There's some interesting tight ends, but nobody who's going to be a starter, in my mind. The most interesting in terms of just being able to possibly make plays is Blake Mack.
Yes.
He is 229 pounds.
Yep.
And the NFL doesn't like that.
No, they don't. They really don't. I mean, they won't tell you, but they do not like undersized tight ends. They don't know how to use them. They're just, what do I do with this?
Come here, H-back joker tight end. Boom, you're a fullback.
Exactly.
So I hope that he doesn't get full-backed, but it could happen. Other guys that I think help themselves or solidified or whatever term you're talking about. I think that Stephen Dunbar, also one of the wide receivers, is a guy that helped himself a little bit. He looked like special teams won't be too hard for him, like he can do that. He made a couple of nice over-the-shoulder, a couple of nice jump ball plays in red zone. Looked, for a guy his height, looked pretty fluid getting in and out of his breaks. He's one of the taller receivers here. And let's see, amongst the D-line guys, the true D-linemen, the guys who will be playing with their hand in the dirt at the next level. Right. Once again, no mind-bogglers, no guys that blew your mind. Justin Lawler's decent.
Yeah, he's decent.
Marcel Frazier had some good reps. Good reps. They'll be in a rotation. Chad Thomas will end up getting drafted probably higher than he should just because of the
Miami
name brand, right?
And he's also pretty big.
Right. He's big.
Just in terms of looking at him, initial impressions, he looks the part.
He is the most looks the part guy of all the defensive linemen here. He looks like Greg Ellis. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's got the long arms, broad shoulders, thin, small waist, big butt. I mean, he's what you think you should want.
Right.
But he's probably going to be overdrafted because of it.
Right.
Futukasi had a couple of good reps too.
Yeah.
Maybe
Connecticut,
Right, and if he can play 5 technique, which I guess testing will help us figure that out. Maybe. If it turns out he can do that, he'll probably make some money at least based on that. Oh, and Monte Maddux is, once again, made-to-order slot corner guy. Is another guy that I think made some money here. People always whine about his size. And he's not big. I mean, there's no getting around it. But the league has several guys his size who are making a fine contribution. I think he'll find a way as well. Amongst the taller corners, Greg Stroman is super skinny. He still has his high school body. And I don't know if that's, once again, like a guy that just
they don't feed him enough.
Yeah, right.
They don't get him enough food. I mean, you have to understand, these small school players, a lot of times...
Virginia Tech?
A lot of times, strength and conditioning coaches is sometimes it's the coach.
But I mean, that's what Virginia Tech's known for a long time. Was known for was building guys up physically.
Right.
I think once again, both of the Virginia Tech corners will be drafted and will probably stick somewhere. Faison's the bigger, stronger kid, and then Stroman, like I said, very thin.
Very thin.
Like I said, literally still has his high school body. So there'll be teams that'll sort of want to ask him, I'm assuming, some questions about that. Like, hey, why are you 176 pounds?
Yeah.
With your as tall as you are. A lot of people lost their minds over Trey Flowers' measurements. There was nothing that he did in practices that would make you lose your mind, though. He's extremely long. He has long legs and long arms, long everything. He's long. But there's not much else there, to me.
Right.
I didn't see anything else that made me think, let's see. Oh, the quarterbacks. I guess we have to talk about the quarterbacks, right?
Right.
Okay.
Actually, let's save the quarterbacks for it. So,
okay.
And we'll do it by each roster. So the East team, and then we'll get to the West team, just to divide it that way. That way, there's not a lot of like double backing and stuff like that.
Sure.
With the East team, in terms of offensive linemen,
East.
The guys I was really impressed with during the week, of course, and of course I was here for Monday, Tuesday, a couple days longer. I really like Brian Allen. I liked him initially coming in.
Right.
Now again, he wasn't dominant. This wasn't like a Zach Martin Senior Bowl performance, if you will. Just tossing people around, stuff like that. But he was one of the most sound offensive linemen here. Just in terms of just technique and just knowing exactly what he needed to do. But he was definitely impressive. Tony Adams from North Carolina State made a couple plays here and there. Cory Helms of South Carolina was another guy who got really good pop on the pads. Just showed a lot of initial power in terms of what he was bringing to the table. Jared Jones-Smith from Pittsburgh was a guy kind of
the long kid.
Yeah, he's long. The first couple days he definitely made some. As the weeks went on, days went on, he was kind of a little but definitely kind of showed some things. And Jamar McLoyster from Syracuse the part wasn't amazing, but definitely kind of did his thing. In terms of him. But in terms of the offensive linemen, at least on the East roster, so not the West roster, because we'll get to the West roster, but just on the East roster, what were some of the offensive linemen that stuck out to you?
Allen's the best offensive lineman here overall. And, the other guy who I think is really proved some things is on the other rosters, so we'll touch about him yet. And to me, the other guys, you saw flashes. I even saw McDermott look good intermittently.
Right.
Similar to me, like McLoster, but they're kind of the same guys. Only one's white, one's black, but they're sort of the same dude.
Right.
Jared Jones-Smith is going to probably be overdrafted. Once again,
True.
Super long.
Right.
A guy who probably should still get in the weight room. I mean, I didn't see a lot of power from him. And let's see, you did mention Helms. Helms is especially for a team that just wants to run the ball downhill. He might be a good choice for you. He's not afraid to just lower his pads and just flatten people.
Right.
Adams is maybe the strongest guy.
Yeah.
He might be the most physically powerful of all of them. So once again, depends upon your scheme. But I think if you're run heavy by today's standards,
right.
But if you're a team that wants to run the football, he's a guy who could make an impression for you. And I wonder if anybody will try to teach him to play center. I wonder. I mean,
yeah. I know what you mean.
Right, because not so much because he can't play guard, because he clearly can.
Right.
But if he's going to be a backup, which he probably will be, you want that guy to be able to back up more than one position.
Right,
You're only carrying 7 offensive linemen.
Exactly.
8 at the most, but most teams carry 7.
Right.
But he's a guy that I think will play in the league for 8 years.
Okay. Well, now we shift to quarterback. So we're talking about the East team quarterback.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Are you sure? You didn't see that, guys. He was loosening up. He was getting ready to just get those uppercuts in with the quarterback class here. Of course, 3 guys here. We had Reilly Ferguson from Memphis. The guy that let's be honest. Like we talked about, going into the game, you thought he would be a little bit taller and a little bit bigger. For some reason, guys, just to be completely, when I saw him in person, I was like, what's going on? Because he did not look very big, very malnourished is probably not the best term to make for a quarterback.
He was far more slender than expected.
Right. And in terms of his play this week, I mean, he was okay. The first day was kind of all over the place, not the most accurate, not the most consistent, made a lot of mistakes. And, again, as the days went on, he got a little bit better.
Right.
But not the best impression. In terms of his Shrine Week, it was not what some people, because there are a lot of Reilly Ferguson guys out there that really, really love Reilly
I was
Ferguson.
a fan coming into this, but I have some concerns.
Right. So, in terms of his performance, what are your thoughts?
Right, so he shrunk. I mean,
Right.
So he was shorter and much thinner than expected.
Right.
He was a guy that was listed at 6'4" and supposedly played at 210 or more throughout most of the season. He told me when I talked to him that just a few days ago he was 203 pounds, but that he has to eat constantly,
Right.
apparently, to keep weight on.
Right.
So just by going down to eating 3 meals a day, he's dropped down to 196 pounds, and he looks like a possession receiver.
He does.
I mean, that's what he looks like. He looks like
So I'm moving Lamar Jackson to wide receiver.
right.
Reilly Ferguson to wide
Reilly
receiver.
Ferguson is thinner than Lamar Jackson, people, now at least.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a thing that teams are going to have circles and question marks and squiggles on their notes. Like, why is he so little? And as you noted, he's a guy who he has a tendency to bounce a little bit than he should, more than he should. He doesn't always take the right depth on the drop.
Nope.
So sometimes, even though it's a 3-step drop, he's really like 2 1/4 steps back, and sometimes he's 4 steps back. So he there's a lot of inconsistency. You could tell he hadn't played under center very much. But I'm not going to make excuses for him. He had a rough week.
Yes.
He had a rough week.
Yes.
And I don't think he's going to get drafted unless something changes radically. Maybe he has an amazing pro day or something.
Right.
But I think he'll be on somebody's camp. But I'm not entirely sure he gets drafted now.
Okay. Shift into Quentin Flowers. Of course, South Florida quarterback.
Legend.
Legend, definitely.
He's a legend in South Florida.
Yeah. Definitely a guy that going into the week there was some of the same things people say about Lamar Jackson get put onto Quentin Flowers. Should we move this guy to wide receiver? Should we move him to running back? Should we do this? Should we do that with him?
Can he play safety?
Can he play safety?
Yeah.
And in terms of interviewing him and also talking with other guys that interviewed him as well, he was pretty much open to do what by any means necessary. I'm going to make an NFL roster. In terms of his approach here, in terms of going to get punt returns, kick returns, just anything you want me to do, Coach, I'm going to do it. I want to play quarterback, but if you don't want me to play quarterback, I can definitely do whatever you need. I'm going to be that guy. What were your general impressions of him? Because with me, just during the week, I saw him and I'm like, again, it's just the way he looked. He looked like a skill position guy.
He physically is built like a running back.
Right.
If you were to put Justin Jackson and Quentin Flowers right next to each other and had them switch uniforms,
right.
I don't think many people would be able to tell that that's what had happened.
Right.
He does look physically like a running back, like a slot receiver or whatever. He's a short, compact, explosive guy, and I think the things that are underrated about him, football IQ, he's a kid who figures things out.
Right.
He does have a strong enough arm. His arm isn't weak. However, some of the things I just mentioned with Ferguson are even truer of Quentin Flowers. Very quick-footed, and if you can get him to take the right depth drop and, once again, avoid the whole... He has a habit of rising up on his toes because he's 5'10" and change. Right? So you need to tell him, hey, no, I know what you're doing and why you're doing it, but screw your cleats into the ground, and you're going to... That ball that instead of fluttering a little on you will a guy right in the chest.
Right.
So, because his arm strength is not an issue.
Oh, no.
He may have the strongest arm here, actually. Or it's close,
Very
probably,
close.
between
Very
he
close.
and... Yeah. I mean, it's right. He has one of the better arms here.
Right.
So... There's some things to work with if you think he's a quarterback and you work with him, which people don't do all that much nowadays with developmental guys. But if they're willing to do it, they might get something. If they decide he's not a quarterback, he'll take that in stride and probably still make your team somehow. I was talking with one of the scouts on the sidelines, and I said, he's kind of a Woody Dantzler type. And Woody Dantzler was a better quarterback than people might remember, quite frankly. But teams will probably not believe he can play quarterback. That's just a fact. Mm-hmm. Teams will not believe in it. And unless something, once again, radical happens, I think he'll be moved to another position.
Okay. Yeah, because that's the main thing. The team has to believe in you first before anything else happens. They don't believe in you, then it's just...
When you show up to camp and they give you, a running back's playbook or a wide receiver's playbook, and they send you with that group, they've told you what they think.
Exactly.
And can you still sometimes sneak your way into a QB room meeting or whatever? Or, hey, can I warm up the wide receivers? Let me show you a little something. I hope he gets invited to the combine as one of the throwing guys. I do. And it doesn't sound super great, but I mean, it helped Tony Romo tremendously.
Right.
I think if Romo hadn't been invited to be one of the arms at the combine his year, I think he would not have been the hot commodity priority undrafted free agent that he was. So I think if he gets a chance to show people he can consistently put the ball on receivers that he doesn't know, right? Consistently, and it gets there with zip, it might help somebody to at least be open to the idea of seeing him as a quarterback.
Right. And then, of course, the last quarterback, J.T. Barrett, Ohio State. Everybody knows the name. Some people really like him a lot. Maybe not love him, but I mean, there are some who love him, but they love him for different reasons. Right. In terms of his performance here, he probably was one of the more consistent guys.
Yep.
Every week. Very good in interviews. Very laid back. Very not very loud and gregarious or anything else like that. But just straight to the point. So, you could look at him, talk to him, and you go, "Yeah, this guy's pretty solid." In terms of just his overall, would be solid. If I would sum up his personality, it'd be solid. In terms of just being strong, not nothing really phasing him, that kind of thing.
JT Barrett's a businessman on a business trip.
Yeah.
And if you are, once again, not to stereotype, but once again, if you're a West Coast team, and especially if your offense likes to move the pocket a bit, we've got some bootlegs and some waggles and even some occasional design quarterback runs, you might say this guy can be our backup. He was, to my mind, by far the most consistent of the quarterbacks I've seen, frankly, on either roster. And you could see him, once again, doing some, even though he wasn't, in your face a lot, but he did some leadership things. You could see him occasionally correcting guys or talking to guys a little bit about things. And I'm going to go out on, I don't think a very long limb, and say I'm willing to bet he probably did a pretty good job in meetings and talks with teams of getting across who he is, what he is, and how he can help your team. I think he'll be drafted day 3, and I think he'll hang around the league for a little while.
That's where I kind of not again. This is not to say that I am a big JT. Day 3 is definitely the area where I would draft him, but I do get a feel with JT Barrett, and this is just something to throw out there, and you could come back to it and quote Jim Coburn if you want to quote Jim Coburn or not. Is that he just seems like that type of guy that could end up being a day 2 quarterback based solely on the fact that, again, this is a guy that has been a starter for a relatively long time. He knows how to execute the offense. His personality as a quarterback is something that really vibes well with most coaches. Most coaches really like that personality at the quarterback position. And they could look at a guy like that in day 2 and think to themselves, our quarterback situation is a little dicey, or they need a backup quarterback, or they don't really think that they need to, which, again, I don't always agree with taking a day 2 quarterback to be a backup and stuff like that, but he just seems like a guy that there could be an NFL team that would take him day 2 in that situation, just because of all the intangibles, and there are limitations to him. But a lot of coaches can work around those limitations, because coaches always try to do that with most guys. Even guys that are uber talented that have limitations, they're willing to take that because they see all the other, components and stuff like that with him.
Right. You could look at him and say, I see my Cody Kessler. Now the question is, how much do you value Cody Kessler?
Exactly.
So there are teams, as has been proven, who will think that's a day 2 guy.
Right.
as you probably shouldn't be, as you just pointed out.
Yeah.
But it could certainly happen. I mean, any of the guys we discussed and some guys we haven't discussed could go way earlier than we could ever imagine. And there will be somebody, probably more than one somebody, who goes in this draft way earlier than we could ever have imagined. Yeah. If somebody takes Chad Thomas in the bottom of the second, I'm just saying. I mean, I'm saying it would happen.
It could happen.
But it sure as heck could.
Yeah.
Where some D-line coach stands on the table, as they say, and says, "Oh, I know he didn't do blah, 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 but you give him to me, and I'll coach him up, and I'll turn him to a 10-sack guy."
Right.
Things happen in the draft.
They always do. Now shifting to the running backs on the East squad. Of course, this group, they had Ralph Webb of Vanderbilt. They had Chase Edmonds of Fordham. And then they also had D'Ernest Johnson from South Florida. Yep. That group was a little... Now, Chase Edmonds, to start the week out, I know you weren't here, but Monday and Tuesday looked pretty good in both those practices.
Best of the group, yeah.
Right. And then as the days went on, kind of... Wore down, and yeah. In terms of those three running backs, who is your favorite, and then, what are your general...
Edmonds is and still was my favorite.
Right.
These are all guys who are kind of similar to each other once again.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a Jordan Shun. They're all the same 5'9", 5'10", 200 to 208 or whatever pound guy who needs to be able to show people he can be a third down back.
Right.
Edmonds, I think, is the quickest of the group. I think he has probably the best hands of the group.
Right.
I think Ralph Webb may be the strongest or toughest. Probably toughest. Right? That's the strongest, the toughest.
Yeah,
actually, let me rephrase that. Right. I think Webb's probably the toughest of the group, but I don't think teams prize toughness in 202-pound guys, unfortunately, whether it's fair or not. So I think Edmonds is a guy who gets drafted 6th round or something like that, and it's the right situation. I think he could stick. I don't think D'Ernest Johnson will end up being drafted, and I think Webb has an outside shot at being drafted as well, but he'll definitely just show people that he can contribute in special teams and they can catch the ball.
Exactly. And of course, we get to the tight end group.
Oh boy.
But the East team, of course, they had Ethan Wolf of Tennessee. They had Cam, is it Sereni? Yeah, from Wake Forest. And then, of course, they had Damon Gibson from Minnesota State.
Yep.
None of these guys really... Ethan Wolf had a one-handed catch, but it was one of the most uninspiring... boring one-handed catches you probably will ever see.
And my understanding is that the Canadian kid, Rijas Sibasu, is a guy they see as a tight end projection, is what I've been told.
Right, okay.
Even though he's listed as a wideout.
Right. In terms of the tight end group, at least on the East squad, general.
Well, I mean, one of the things you say is meh, or whatever.
Right.
I mean, that's it. That's what they are.
Okay.
The one that I liked the most coming in was Sereni, but he did nothing.
Right.
Almost literally nothing. I mean, he didn't do much in the run-pass drills or the pass-blocking drills that made me think he's going to be a good enough blocker to be a blocking tight end.
Right.
He didn't show me enough when he was catching the ball to make me think he's going to somehow be valuable enough that he can become, a Chris Cooley type or something. Mm-hmm. The Canadian kid is quick-ish, but not fast. And he's a little undersized, so I'm not sure what the future holds there. Plus, he's raw. Sereni at least is a bit of a technician as a route runner, but no explosiveness. Zero explosiveness. Gibson at least shows, in terms of just raw physical ability, may be the guy with the most something there. But there's not a huge amount of that either. I mean, he's still... So you're talking about getting a guy from a small school who... is just beginning to learn how to block. And to his credit, after getting just bullied earlier, I saw him giving better. Giving better effort, giving better technique. I think he rocked back. I think it might have been Chad Thomas. He rocked back some much bigger D-end in one of the drills, in the second half or whatever of one of the pass blocks. So he got slapped around and then he got his head together, whatever it is, and then it looked better after that. So there's some hope there, but once again, a guy that I think is a priority and drafted free agent. none of the tight ends that I've seen so far, and maybe something will pop out during the game, are guys I would spend a draft pick on.
Okay. All right. Then we get to the wide receiver group, which is probably in terms of the offensive on the East squad, probably the wide receiver group. Of course, you had Deshaun Hamilton from Penn State, Jester Way from Pittsburgh, Darius Fountain from Northern Iowa, Justin Watson from Pennsylvania, and of course, you talk about Regis Savas, who they're thinking as a tight end, but he is, this
he's listed as a wide receiver. But yes, people want to see if they can move him to
the wide receiver group. I liked a lot. I liked a lot of the. Fountain, I think, was probably the more impressive. Out of that group. Each week was making plays down and forth. Came off very, very, very strong in interviews. Projected really well in terms of just his general presence and
football character comes across.
Right.
Understands the game.
Yeah.
Clear vision of what he is and what he isn't. And even a good assessment of defensive talent. Like, he had a good idea of who the best. I mean, obviously, it's not a huge part of what you do is understanding who's good on the other team. But you have to have some idea of
a lot of social awareness.
Yeah, a lot of social awareness.
Yeah.
A really good athlete. Mm-hmm. I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised with how he tests.
Very surprised.
When he tests.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be in the top 5 or 6 in the wide receiver group. I mean, he might not get to the combine. It would be great if he did. Mm-hmm. But wherever he goes to test, when stacked against the combine guys, he's going to be with the top 5 or 6 probably amongst the wide receivers.
Right. And again, with the rest of the group, I mean, Justin Watson, of course, you weren't there for the days that he actually
did things,
but he was a guy that definitely showed off some pretty decent route running ability, at least the first couple of days. And then, of course, Justin Way did a couple of things here and there. Deshaun Hamilton also did a couple of things.
Yeah, all the receivers flashed something.
Yeah, all of them did something at some point this week. So, any other thoughts on the wide receiver group?
Sure. Good size amongst the group as well.
Right.
There's not a bunch of tiny receivers here. The receivers are 6'1", 6'2", 6'3".
Right.
Good size group. And good athletes for their size. None of the big receivers are plotters. The big receivers can move. As you mentioned, Watson can move. Fountain's not so much a big receiver, though he's not small. Moves explosively well. I mean, he's the most explosive of them. Jester, as you mentioned, is another guy, good size, but moves fairly well. There's with the exception of the Canadian kid, all the receivers are guys that won't have to be moved to tight end or moved. Even the big ones are guys that are going to be able to stay playing receiver. And yes, I mean, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Fountain was my favorite coming in. He's even more my favorite coming out. Confirmation bias be damned. I really liked Fountain, and I really, really like Fountain now.
Right.
The guy that I like more now than I did coming in is Jester Way. Jester Way, I like more now than I did coming in. I thought he was a guy that disappeared at times while he was at Pitt, which a guy his size with his talent shouldn't have been able to do. So that worried me a little bit, but I like him a little bit better now. And Hamilton. That's the other guy that came away with more impressed than I had from his tape in college. Hamilton was a guy that I thought, looked the part and all this stuff, but I thought he was kind of just a guy when I watched him on tape. I think he could be more than just a guy. I think in the right situation, he becomes a solid number 3 receiver in the league for years.
Okay. All right, shifting to the cornerbacks, the cornerback group. A lot of different flavors and different stuff like that with the group. Of course, you had Dietrich Nichols from South Florida, who, at least out of this cornerback group, moved pretty well compared to the other guys, just going through drills and doing everything else like that. Of course, you have Devontae Delaney from Miami, Monte Maddux from Pittsburgh, Grant Haley from Penn State, Greg Stroman from Virginia Tech, Brandy Fassie-Son from Virginia Tech as well.
Pronounced Faison.
Faison. In terms of the cornerback group, who were the guys that kind of stuck out to you the most?
And once again, I'm going to admit my biases. Right. I do like quick, powerful, explosive little dudes. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 of them that stood out to me amongst that group. The guys are going to be future nickels.
Right.
Monte Maddux is very competitive, tough-minded, tough dude. He's not going to test super well, I don't think, but he's going to test well enough. And I think he's going to hang around for a while. I think he's a guy that depending on what you even do in certain situations, might even almost play like a safety, even though he's not very big. And with Dietrich Nichols, he's actually played some safety, even though he's not exactly a big cat. So those are two really versatile, those small corners, nickel types that I think will hang around for a while. Of the bigger guys, I think Brandon Faison, somebody's going to fall in love with him. Virginia Tech, which has a pretty good reputation amongst defensive backs coaches around the league. So they usually say, "Oh yeah, a kid from Virginia Tech can work with that." So he's going to find a place in the NFL. He'll probably be drafted somewhere in the 5th round. Stroman is a guy that has some good reps here and on tape. Like you watch him on tape, he has to make some plays. Like, wow, that's a good play. But it's impossible not to be a little bit concerned. He is so thin,
very thin.
You've got to have at least a tiny bit of concern. Hey, Dale Carter was thin, but he wasn't quite this thin. But he was thin, and he had a almost Hall of Fame level career. He's not Dale Carter.
Right.
Dale Carter was also elite level change of direction, explosive speed. None of the corners here have blinding speed. There's some guys with quickness, some guys who have some speed. But I think 4.51 might be the fastest guy here. I don't know if there's a guy in the 4.4s. If so, not deep. He might be 4.49. I don't think there's a guy faster than that from what I saw just watching amongst the corners here. So they're all guys who are more likely either zone corners or nickels.
Right.
There's not a guy that is your classic man corner that I saw. Even the bigger corners were guys that, to my mind, didn't quite have the feet or hips to be able to survive out there permanently.
Right. So moving on to of course, Bill doesn't really like the term edge, but the pass rushers, the guys that go get the quarterback, right, guys?
Yeah.
In terms of this group, you had Marcus Martin from Slippery Rock. Of course, I got a chance to interview, which is on the channel as well. Kentavious Street from North Carolina State. Dalton Keene from Illinois State. Chad Thomas from Miami. Curtis Cothran from Penn State. In terms of that group, it was in terms of the East group of defensive ends. I mean, Marcus Martin definitely did his thing. Had a lot of different good reps all around. Came off really well in interviews. Of course, everybody that I've talked to that interviewed him came off very smart, very intelligent, very just very
polished. He's a polished
guy. A very, very polished guy. Chad Thomas, like we talked about before, is the most he looks like an NFL defensive end. He's the guy that just kind of looks the part the most. Dalton Keene made a couple plays here and there. Has good hair.
Great hair, great attitude, try hard kid. Yeah.
Right. And Kentavious Street was a guy that the first couple practices, very explosive. Just the guy that has the best get off of the group
by far. Yeah,
it's him by far. But just not consistent,
and not a technician. Certainly
not a technician. Not that either. In terms of the edge, the pass rushers that were in this particular group.
Once again, these are, to me, day 3 type dudes. Marcus Martin is a guy that I think some 3-4 teams will want to stand up. He'll need to improve his space movement skills. You can tell he works at it. You can tell he wants to do it. You can tell he's not at all comfortable. There are parts of his brain that are panicking every time he's asked to not move forward. And you want to get to the point. You don't have to look like a corner out there, but you have to get to at some point where part of your brain isn't in panic mode when you're asked to go to the hook, curl, flat area, things like that. So that'll be a question with him, if he can at least get to the point where he's functional when he's asked to do 3-4 linebackery things. Chad Thomas is going to probably be the one drafted first amongst the group.
Yes.
Just because...
Yes, definitely. Just because of the height, weight, speed, size, what he looks like.
Because of the way he looks. I mean, he literally... When people draw up NFL defensive ends, this is what they draw up. Long arm, broad shoulders, thin waist, the bubble butt, just powerful looking. He doesn't always play with power. He had a few really good reps. but he spaced them out. I don't know if it was on purpose. But he didn't put them back to back. He wouldn't have 2 good reps back to back. He'd give you a really good rep, then a meh rep, then a rep, and then a few minutes later, there we go.
Good rep again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if he was conserving him or if that's just who he is. A guy who can give you 1 or 2 really good reps every now and again.
Right.
And so that scares me a little bit. But he's going to probably be drafted somewhere in the low 100s, 112, 118, 104, something like that. And once again, bounce around the league for a little while. In the right situation, I see Marcus Martin sticking, especially a team that doesn't ask their 3-4 outside linebackers to do a lot in the passing game, other than rush the passer. Mm-hmm. Kentavious Street is the one that I think has the best chance to be productive in the NFL, but he'll once again need the right situation.
Right.
The Titans. You know what I mean? Like a situation where there's a lot of other surrounding talent. The coaching is really, really good, and the standards are so high that they won't take him not being all go all the time, or they'll literally, it'll be, blanket party. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but like you can tell he needs a high pressure environment where everybody's all full go. You can't be the one guy who isn't doing that. If he goes to a team where it's not that high level, high standards, you got to go all the time. I could see him just being kind of a guy who, once again, just based on the fact that he can do certain things, hangs around for a little while, but is out of the league in 5 or 6 years.
And then, of course, we get to the defensive tackle group here. And there were some guys that I liked out of this group.
Same here.
Fuller Runzu, Fatukasi from Connecticut. He was a guy that pretty much every single day was showing a little bit of something. They also had, Deidrin Senat from South Florida, who was another guy that... Now, the first couple practices was doing a lot better than the third and the fourth practice.
Worn down a bit or something. Yeah,
Right. But definitely was showing a little bit of stuff here and there. In terms of the D-tackle group at the East practices, who were some of the guys?
Yeah, the most impressive one for me was Fuller Runzu Fatukasi. Yeah. I think that some teams will want to see if he can play 5 technique. He's got decent length. He's strong. Maybe the strongest of that, or maybe not the strongest. Let's put that differently. Probably the one best able to get movement on the edge of a guard of that group. And it's not so much maybe because of his strength, because he maybe he's not the strongest, but because he has enough quickness that he can gain a bit of an advantage and start to turn you better than some of the other guys. And he seems to have pretty decent technique also. He seems to know how to create those situations where he can actually get some movement. And I think as he gets even stronger, once again, the assumption is that you get an NFL weight program, he might get even stronger. Like I said, he could be a guy who could hang around the league for a while, either as like a 4-eye for teams that do that kind of thing, and especially nowadays with all the situationals where you flop him inside, head up on a guard in certain situations, you kick him outside in certain situations and let him, maybe not wide 9 it, but 7 technique, maybe even in certain situations. I could see him being versatile enough to hang around for quite some time. Cothran is a guy that I had liked a bit on tape, wanted to like more, but I didn't see enough to make me think, oh yeah, like there's nothing he did that made me think I need to watch way more of his tape now. He didn't make me, like with Fatukasi, I'm going to go back and watch more tape. Mm-hmm. It didn't quite happen with him. With Street, I'm going to go back and watch more tape.
Right.
Because obviously most of his pages to Bradley Chubb anyway. And once again, that's how what I saw of Street was when they would slide everything away from Chubb, try everything towards Chubb, try to take him away, and then there's Street, like, oh, nice play, Street. So now I'm going to go back and look more at him. And then Devin Sanat is another one of the classic squatty-bodied, powerful dudes who can get underneath, especially the taller lineman's pads, and tilt him backwards.
Right.
Here, let me push this guy back into the running back. Right. I wish he knew a little bit more about how to get rid of that guy, as opposed to steering that guy around. Mm-hmm. And so, once again, coaching would be big for him. If he gets a coach that shows him, hey, you don't have to just be in a taffy pull. Right. You can actually discard that guy and get clean into the backfield as opposed to shoving this guy into the backfield. Right. But I think he'll also, once again, the right situation, but I could see him hanging around the league for 8 years, 9 years.
Yeah. I can see that as well, with both those guys. In terms of the linebacker group, so now we're getting into the line. Yeah, exactly. Now they had some names here that people are familiar with. Matthew Thomas from Florida State, obviously. Jacob Pugh from
also Florida State.
Also Florida State. Paris Bennett from Syracuse.
Yep.
Also one of the more productive guys here as well. They had also had Jason Kabinda.
Yep, Kabinda from Penn State.
Kabinda from Penn State, of course, is the neck roll.
Yes, the neck roll guy.
So if you're not familiar with him, he's
a neck roll guy.
He's a neck roll guy from Penn State.
I kind of liked him on tape. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course DJ Palmore,
productive,
from Navy. And Chris Worley from Ohio State, who's kind of your generic Ohio State linebacker who kind of he stays in his lane and does his thing. And
hey guys, I'm an Ohio State.
I'm gonna stay here. If you come over here,
I got you.
If you go over there, not my business, not my job. It's not written into my
contract.
Yeah. In terms of this group, I'm going to be completely honest with the linebacker group, at least on the East team. Not a lot of them really stuck out to me. Whether going through drills, whether
Kabinda might be a guy who becomes a special teams demon and hangs around the league for a while that way. Right. But none of these guys are going to start at linebacker for or should not.
Yeah.
Start at linebacker for anybody in the NFL.
Right. Was there any? Like, none really came to mind?
In my mind, I'd already moved Marcus Martin to linebacker, so that was the guy I was sort of hanging my hat on amongst the linebackers.
Right.
But, like I said, when I'm not kidding when I say that, I think Kabinda has the attitude, fortitude, mental, physical toughness that he could have a 5-6 year career as a special teams guy. Maybe even the same thing could happen for Palmore. But I'm less sold on him.
Right.
And then from there, it's guys who I just don't think have a place in the NFL.
I gotcha. And then, of course, we get to the safety group at the East. Yeah.
It's an interesting bunch.
It's interesting. Of course, you have Jordan Martin from Syracuse.
Yep.
Tracy Walker from Louisiana Lafayette. Damon Webb from Ohio State. Trey Marshall from Florida State. Jamar Summers from Connecticut, who played a little bit of cornerback, played a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Moved around. Yep.
Right. And then, of course, you have Trey Flowers from Oklahoma State, who was the guy that everybody was going goo gaga over because he had really long arms at the position.
Yep.
In terms of my general impressions of the safety group, there definitely were a couple guys who stuck out. Obviously, physically speaking, the guys like Trey Flowers kind of stuck out just from a physical standpoint. Damon Webb stuck out from like most of the guys, they stuck out just because of the physical.
It's a big bunch of safeties. Yes, I noticed that.
Yeah, because of that. But there wasn't really any one guy that really grabbed me or, took me by the hand and showed me a good time.
Right. Nobody's here's like saying to me, man, you got to watch more tape on me.
Exactly.
Summers is the only one who's even slightly interesting.
Right.
And it's not so much because he blew it up or anything. It's mostly that because he's a guy that has coverage skills, right? He at least knows how to do certain things. If you're a team that is going to, once again, play big nickel or whatever, you're going to have to... Right. Can he cover the slot? Probably. Can he help you in the running game? Yeah. And that's the issue, right? So you better hope they don't run a draw, and it better not come his way. Right. But that's the only one that I'm even somewhat considering watching more tape on. Okay. I'm pretty solid on what these other guys are, and like I said, I know people are super excited about all the length, but I've seen Trey Flowers before.
I have as well.
I wasn't new to Trey Flowers.
Right.
I know exactly who he is. There was a Florida State super tall, stiff safety from a few years ago that the Dallas Cowboys drafted. And was in the league for like 2, maybe 3 years, and then gone.
There was a Syracuse safety.
Right.
I don't know if you remember him, but he was the guy that had a ton of length, and people were going, look at that length.
Look at all the length.
Couldn't really move in space very well. Wasn't very explosive. Wasn't very fast. But he had length.
Yes.
So that, to me, seems like Trey Flowers.
Right.
Trey Flowers.
Right. I mean, he's a little shorter than Danny Watkins, so I think it was something like 6'5" or something crazy, but close to it. But all the things that excited people for whatever reason about Danny Watkins is what he is, but his actual tape, not great against the run.
Nope.
Not an astonishingly good tackler. Not even an average tackler, to be perfectly honest.
Nope.
And God forbid should a halfway decent slot receiver. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You know, they talk about highlights, but there's lowlights.
Yes.
Those lowlights.
His lowlights are pretty damn low.
Pretty low.
The Texas Tech game is not something he'll want to revisit.
No.
In case you're wondering, if you fell a little bit in love with him, Trey Flowers, just based on measurements, throw on that Texas Tech game, and it'll be like a nice cold shower. That
right.
your chub will go away.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the last sort of guys. So we'll talk about special teams, and then honestly, because we did go a little bit long, we'll take a break, and then we'll do the West team. Just take a little quick break before we get into them.
Pause for the cause.
Right. So in terms of kickers and punters that were there, they had Drew Brown from Nebraska, and they also had Joseph Davidson from Bowling Green, who's a punter.
Yep.
Special teams wise, any of the kickers, punters stick out at the East practice?
Davidson had more length of the two, but they were trying to teach them at one point to directional punt, and neither of them, I don't know if they'd ever done it before in their lives, but neither of them looked like they had done it in their lives before.
Dude, yeah.
Right. I don't know if they'd done it before, but if they had, they didn't look like they had.
Right.
Every time they were asked to do something other than straight on punting, it led to, a shank party. It was a party o' shanks. Once they were asked to try to do different things other than just punt straight down the field. Right. And neither one looked like they would be great. I mean, once again, not that this is a big deal, but I do also look to see if a guy would be, hey, if he has to make a tackle. I mean, sometimes it comes to that. I didn't see a guy who looks like, I mean, once again, with punters, you're just looking when they're not doing a lot anywhere, but definitely not an all-star game practice. But when they're just messing around, do you see a guy who, when they're just tossing the ball around, looks like a natural athlete? If, God forbid, he had to make a tackle, he's lucky he could do it. I wasn't blown away by that. There was a place kicker who at least looked like a halfway decent athlete. But no, the punters both looked kind of like, not quite ostriches, but you know what I mean? Like
Right.
They were both kind of leggy, which I guess doesn't surprise me. They're punters. But guys that would struggle probably to break down if, God forbid, they needed to make a tackle.
Yeah, they kind of look like they just wanted to invite somebody who looks kind of. It's like when you go onto like The Price is Right, and they pick certain guys just to like, let's see that on stage, like in front of all of us.
That guy's wearing
like an inside joke almost.
That guy's wearing a funny hat.
Exactly.
Right?
So let's invite him on stage to show him off, because it'll be fun and everybody will get a good laugh out of it.
Right, so the punters were like the funny hat guys.
Yeah.
And Davidson is listed as 6'7", and it looked like he might have been darn near that height.
Yeah.
But I was very worried about, once again, like I said, if everything goes wrong and he has to go tackle somebody, I don't feel good about that at all. Bradley Hunter was a pretty good long snapper. His snaps seemed to be on time, good velocity, good placement.
One scout in particular who was talking to him, the only note he had that he was concerned was to not get too big, because he was saying that when he was getting into 250s, he said don't do that basically. But that was the only concern that one of the scouts at the practice had with him.
Right. Well, he's listed at 240, and I'm assuming that he's not going to go all David Boston on it. Long snappers rarely do that, I guess, anyway.
Right.
So he'll probably be all right. I'm trying to remember who the place kicker was again. There was a kid who...
You mean the Nebraska?
Yeah,
Brown?
The place kicker was... Yes, okay.
Or...
Yeah, I think... Was that the place kicker? I'm trying to remember who...
Drew Brown was the kicker that was there.
Okay, that was the place kicker. Yeah. I was trying to remember. He looked fairly... I mean, once again, I'm just going from him messing around.
Right.
I saw him warming up some receivers up. He had a decent arm, I saw him catching the ball. I mean, it's silly, but you don't see kickers do much.
No, you
so
don't.
There's not much to go on.
You don't.
I saw him hit some 40, 45 yarders, and maybe I think 48 might be the longest I see him make. And everything beyond that, I think I saw him miss. So not super strong leg.
Right.
That's all I can really give you on
Right.
that.
Okay. And the last thing before we wrap up this, and then we'll do the West team in the next one. Coaching staff at the East. What were your general thoughts on the coaches that were there? Were you impressed by any of them? Yeah,
it's funny. And once again, we'll talk about the other teams' coaching staff.
Right.
But they I don't want to say they didn't seem to want to be here because that's too strong. But they weren't super fired up. I'll say that much.
Right.
There wasn't
even supposed to be here today. Yeah.
There wasn't There wasn't a whole lot of fire and piss and vinegar and all that stuff in the East coaching staff. They seemed competent. They seemed to have a plan, but they seemed not to be super urgent about executing said plan. You didn't tell them. You know how coaches are yelling at guys often. I'll just go from my practices I was in a million years ago when I was a player. What are you doing walking? You know, like the guy blow a whistle. If you're not running, now somebody's getting all up in your tail. I didn't see that.
Right.
Guys would be jogging or half jogging or flat out walking, and the coaches staff seemed just fine with it.
Yeah. In particular, just to let you guys know, for the Thursday practice, it wrapped up halfway, like maybe an hour.
About an hour early.
And then, in that hour, there was not a lot happening in that hour. It was like maybe 30 minutes of stretching.
A lot of stretching. And then some situationals.
Right, some situationals.
Some quarterbacks went over a few things.
Right.
I saw them talking about ball placement a little bit and footwork, a little bit of footwork work.
Right.
But not super urgent even at that.
Not super urgent. And just kind of 1 hour, done. Get on the bus, out.
Don't get hurt. Right. Get some sleep.
Right.
That kind of thing. That's it.
Exactly. So again, guys, we'll be coming back for the West side of things because this did go. I should have known. This was going to go a little longer than usual. But yeah, we'll get into the West team. Of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And of course,
Bill Carroll. Depending on which one of my Twitter feeds you follow or would like to follow, there's my new school Twitter feed, which is capital B, capital C, ARROLL 138, or at 11 Bravo, the old school OG feed, for those who like the G-Funk. So it's at 11 Bravo 138, and I'm doing some work for Nuts and Bolts Sports, and then I'm also going to do some stuff with Jim talking about this, obviously, but also some things that are coming in the future.
Exactly. And of course, if you like this content,
and why wouldn't you?
And you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody, your mama, your grandmother, your sister-in-law,
your insurance agent,
your ex-girlfriend even, whoever you know that likes football content, share with those people. And hit that notification button as well because that reminds you when another video of mine drops. Because if you're wondering like, man, I've not seen that many Jim Coburn videos. Where are the Jim Coburn videos? Well, if you don't hit that notification button, you're never reminded when a video hits. So definitely do that as well, and we will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.